The wind, a razor-sharp entity, howled its ancient lament across the Karakoram highway. This was the roof of the world, a colossal geological argument between nations where the Himalayas met the Hindu Kush. For centuries, this terrain had been a crucible for empires, but in the late 1960s, it had become the geopolitical flashpoint known simply as the dividing line. The immediate tension was a bitter inheritance of borders drawn in haste, separating two colossal nations now standing at the precipice of war over an icy, disputed ridge. But the true storm, the one that would break men, not merely armies, was not geographical. It was ideological, and it was brewing in the blood of two former friends set to collide at this fissure in the world. There was Dr. Eris Thorne, a British-educated cartographer and geopolitical theorist. To Eris, the world was a rational machine, demanding rational solutions. His ideology was rooted in the Enlightenment ideal, a belief in universal, immutable law, the sanctity of the signed treaty, and the stabilizing power of the democratic republic. He saw conflict as the chaotic failure of systems that privileged sentiment over structure. His mission as an observer for a neutral international commission was to find the definitive, immutable geographic truth, a line on a map that even ideology could not contest. Opposite him, a man he had not seen in 7 years, was Jayan J. Mitra. Jay was Eris's former university roommate and confidant. Where Eris championed state stability, Jay had embraced the fervent, intoxicating doctrine of sovereign socialism and national revivalism. Jay believed the map was a colonial scar, a meaningless relic. His loyalty was not to an abstract legal concept, but to the spirit of the people, to the swift, decisive action of a centralized state, and to the immediate eradication of ancestral poverty. He saw the current dispute not as a territorial squabble, but as a necessary cleansing fire, the moment a young, self-determined nation finally stood up to demand respect. Their friendship at Oxford had been a blend of mutual admiration and intellectual fireworks. Eris, meticulous and logical. Jay, passionate and prone to grand, sweeping visions. In the comfort of the university library, these were merely academic disagreements, lively skirmishes over port and cigars. The dividing line was the cold, harsh terrain that would turn those intellectual arguments into a matter of life and death. The dramatic pivot arrived with the news. Jay, now a key figure in his nation's foreign service, had been appointed the chief liaison to the disputed zone, the very man Eris was tasked to consult with. As Eris's battered jeep began its slow, agonizing ascent into the thin, metallic air of the high passes, the political crisis faded. All Eris could think of was Jay. The ideological fault line was now drawn not between nations, but between two hearts that had once shared a purpose. The storm was not in the valley, it was in the blood, waiting to break. The Karakoram had become their personal arena. The summit of broken trust. The final ascent to the Khardoon Law command post was an exercise in controlled suffering. The air was thin, and every breath was a conscious, painful transaction. Eris's gaze rested on the silent, menacing ridge above, the dividing line. He had mentally rehearsed this meeting countless times, armed with irrefutable facts and maps. He was an emissary of reason, but the real negotiation was with the ghost of his former friend. His jeep finally crested the last rise. Standing on the ice-crusted ground, hands clasped behind his back, was Jayan J. Mitra. The academic softness was gone, replaced by the lean, hard authority of a state agent.
Eris, I knew they'd send you eventually. The map makers always follow the soldiers, don't they?
Jay's voice, deeper now, was laced with brittle formality. Jayan, I replied, I am here as an independent observer. The maps follow the truth, Jay, not the army. Jay offered a thin, almost derisive smile. That is the difference between us, Eris.
You still believe the truth resides in a piece of paper. I believe it resides in the will of the people, the reality of the land, and the boots that stand on it. Inside the Spartan command hut, Jay wasted no time. He pushed a folder toward Eris. We have prepared a statement of our position. We call it the Doctrine of Necessity. Eris opened the folder. It was not a legal brief, but a socio-economic treatise. It spoke not of latitude and longitude, but of caloric intake, population density, and historical subjugation. The core argument was stunning in its audacity. The territory in dispute, regardless of colonial-era treaties, must belong to the nation that most urgently requires its resources for the survival and elevation of its people. Jay, this is beautiful literature, perhaps, but it is not international law. Eris countered, the cold fire of indignation rising in his chest. You cannot simply rewrite the boundary based on a perceived doctrine of need. If every nation uses necessity as its sole moral argument, the entire world order collapses into a zero-sum game of take what you need to survive. Jay leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous intensity. And what do you call the current order, Eris? Is it not already a zero-sum game rigged by those who wrote the rules? Our people need the water flow from that ridge for agriculture. Your immutable law means slow starvation for millions. Which is the greater injustice, a broken treaty or a broken people? The intellectual scars. This was the ideological chasm in its purest form. Eris stood for the moral architecture of the state, the necessity of rules and institutional stability, even if they imposed temporary hardship. Jay stood for the pragmatic morality of the collective, the absolute priority of the people's welfare, even if it meant challenging the global institutional framework. Your passion is misplaced, Jay, Eris insisted. This is the ideology of expediency masked as morality. You justify a territorial grab by citing poverty. That is a dangerous, slippery slope. Today, it is a border. Tomorrow, it is an ethnic group deemed unnecessary to the grand national project. Jay's jaw tightened. Always the philosopher in the warm library, Eris. Always arguing the potential tyranny. I am fighting the present one. The tyranny of hunger. The tyranny of colonial legacy. I remember a time when you saw the justice in fighting the old order. What changed? Did they give you a comfortable seat at their table, or did the sight of real struggle finally frighten you back into the lap of regulation?